rumor that could change the NBA forever. What if I told you the next face of the NBA may have already made the biggest decision of his career, and it has nothing to do with winning another game? Imagine waking up to headlines claiming that Victor Wembanyama, the once-in-a-generation superstar the San Antonio Spurs have built their entire future around, could already be looking for the exit. Not next season, not years from now, right now. And the destination? The Los Angeles Lakers. If that sounds unbelievable, you're not alone. Over the last several hours, the NBA world has been flooded with speculation that has fans arguing, analysts scrambling, and social media exploding. Could the most valuable young player in basketball actually be questioning his long-term future in San Antonio? Or is this another rumor destined to disappear? Either way, one thing is certain. Once a story like this catches fire, it changes the conversation across the entire league. For years, the Spurs believed they had found the perfect successor to the franchise legends who built one of basketball's greatest dynasties. Wembanyama wasn't just expected to become an all-star. He was expected to become the superstar who would return San Antonio to championship glory. And to be fair, he's done almost everything fans could have hoped for. He's dazzled with impossible blocks, effortless three-pointers, elite court vision, and the kind of defensive presence that forces opponents to rethink every possession. Night after night, he has proven why so many believe he could dominate the NBA for the next decade. But greatness also comes with enormous expectation. What happens when a generational player begins wondering whether patience is enough? What happens when the dream of winning now starts competing with the promise of building something later? That's where this story becomes much bigger than a simple trade rumor. Because if there's even a small chance Wembanyama is questioning the Spurs' direction, every contender in the league is paying attention, and no franchise attracts blockbuster speculation quite like the Los Angeles Lakers. Could the Lakers really be preparing for another superstar era? Could Luka Doncic eventually share the floor with the most dominant young big man basketball has ever seen? Or is the NBA witnessing another rumor that has grown far beyond reality? Today, we're breaking down every angle, separating speculation from possibility, and exploring why this story has become the hottest conversation in basketball. Before we dive deeper, let me know where you're watching from today. Do you believe Wembanyama should stay loyal to San Antonio, or would you rather see him chasing championships somewhere else? Drop your city, your country, and your opinion in the comments below. If you're excited for in-depth NBA stories with the biggest drama, smartest analysis, and the latest breaking news, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and if you're ready to hear the full story, type 1" the comment. You won't want to miss what comes next. Why this story hit so hard. The reason this rumor exploded is simple. Victor Wembanyama is not just another star. He is the player San Antonio believed could carry the next 20 years of Spurs basketball. He is the reason the arena feels alive again, the reason national television keeps circling back to San Antonio, and the reason every young player on that roster suddenly looks more important than they did before. So when whispers started connecting him to the Lakers, it did not feel like a normal trade rumor. It felt like an earthquake under a franchise that thought its foundation was finally safe. The Spurs are not a desperate team. They are not a franchise wandering without direction. They have young talent, organizational pride, and a history built on patience, culture, and loyalty. That is what makes the idea so dangerous. If a player like Wembanyama can look at that situation and still wonder whether Los Angeles offers something bigger, then every small market team in the NBA has a reason to be nervous. Because this is not just about basketball fit, it is about power. The Lakers represent spotlight, legacy, global attention, and immediate pressure. San Antonio represents development, stability, patience, and trust. For most young players, the Spurs would be a dream. For Wembanyama, the question becomes different. Is a dream still enough when the entire league is waiting for him to become the face of basketball? That is why fans reacted so emotionally. Spurs fans saw betrayal before anything had even happened. Lakers fans saw destiny. Neutral fans saw chaos. And front offices saw a nightmare scenario. The most unique player in the league even being mentioned in a possible move to the most famous franchise in basketball. The deeper issue is timing. If this had happened 5 years from now, people might understand it. But this early? This soon? That is what makes it feel unreal. Wembanyama was supposed to be the beginning of a new Spurs dynasty. Now the league is asking whether that dynasty could end before it truly begins. And once that question enters the room, it does not leave quiet. The pressure of being the future. People love to talk about greatness like it is only a gift, but sometimes greatness becomes a cage. Victor Wembanyama walked into the NBA carrying expectations that most players would never survive. He was not introduced as a prospect. He was introduced as a revolution. Before he even played a full season, fans were already comparing him to legends. Analysts were already projecting championships, and opposing teams were already building defensive plans around him. That kind of pressure changes everything. Every loss becomes his fault. Every mistake becomes a debate. Every injury scare becomes a national headline. Every quiet moment on the bench becomes a theory about his happiness. And in San Antonio, the pressure is even more complicated because the standard is not just winning. The standard is Tim Duncan. The standard is championships. The standard is loyalty, humility, and staying until the job is finished. That is a beautiful legacy, but it is also a heavy one. Wembanyama is not Duncan. He is from a different era. He grew up in a league where stars have more control, brands matter more, and young superstars understand their value earlier than ever. He has watched players change teams, reshape franchises, and force front offices to move faster. So if he looks around and wonders whether patience is costing him time, that does not mean he is weak. It means he understands how short an NBA prime can feel once the expectations become championship or failure. The Spurs may believe they are building the right way, but Wembanyama may be asking a different question. How long should a generational player wait? 1 year? 3 years? 5 years? That is where the tension begins. San Antonio wants to protect the future. Wembanyama may want to attack the present. And when those two timelines stop matching, even the strongest relationship can start to shake. The scariest part for Spurs fans is not that the Lakers are interested. It is that Los Angeles might represent something San Antonio cannot offer right now. The feeling that the championship window opens immediately. Why? The Lakers change everything. The Lakers do not enter rumors quietly. When Los Angeles is connected to a superstar, the entire league reacts differently. Other teams can be mentioned and people shrug. The Lakers get mentioned and suddenly every podcast, every sports show, every fan account, and every front office starts paying attention. That is the power of the purple and gold. For Wembanyama, the attraction is obvious. The Lakers offer history, pressure, celebrity, global visibility, and the chance to become part of a basketball machine that turns stars into icons. But this story becomes even more dangerous because Los Angeles is not just selling fame. They are selling Luka Doncic. A Luka and Wembanyama pairing would be terrifying. Luka controls tempo like a chess master. He bends defenses, manipulates angles, and creates shots that should not exist. Now imagine him running pick and roll with a 7'4" force who can finish above everyone, stretch the floor, protect the rim, and turn broken plays into highlight. That is not just a good duo. That is a league-wide problem. Defenses would have to choose between giving Luka space, switching smaller players onto Wembanyama, or bringing help and leaving shooters open. Every option feels wrong. Every possession becomes a trap. That is why the rumor feels so explosive. The Lakers would not just be adding a star, they would be creating a new NBA nightmare. But there is another side to this. The Lakers do not have unlimited assets. They cannot simply point at Wembanyama and make him appear. San Antonio controls the situation, at least contractually, and the Spurs would not trade a player like that for a normal package. They would demand everything. Picks, young players, salary flexibility, maybe even a third team, maybe more than any trade package the NBA has seen in years. So the question is not whether the Lakers want him. Of course they would want him. The question is whether they can build an offer so overwhelming that San Antonio would even pick up the phone. San Antonio's impossible decision. For the Spurs, this is the kind of situation every franchise fears. They finally found the player. Not a good player, not a promising player. The player. The one who changes the ceiling of the organization. The one who makes every bad season worth it. The one who gives the fan base hope that another championship era is possible. And now, even the suggestion that he could want something else forces the Spurs into a corner. If they ignore the rumors, they risk looking disconnected from reality. If they respond too strongly, they give the story more oxygen. If they reassure the fans, people will ask why reassurance was even needed. If they explore trades, they admit the foundation may already be cracked. There is no clean move. The emotional answer is simple. Keep him. No matter what. Tell every team to stop calling. Tell Wembanyama that San Antonio is his home, his future, his legacy. Remind him that Duncan stayed, Robinson stayed, Ginobili stayed, Parker stayed, and that real greatness is built through commitment. That sounds powerful, but front offices cannot operate only on emotion. They have to ask harder questions behind closed doors. Does Wembanyama fully believe in the plan? Does he trust the roster? Does he trust the timeline? Does he want to be the Spurs' forever star? Or does he want the biggest stage available? Because if the answer is not clear, the Spurs have to protect themselves. Trading him would be painful. Keeping an unhappy superstar could be even worse. The NBA is full of examples where teams waited too long and lost leverage. San Antonio knows that. Every executive in that building knows that. But this is not just asset management. This is identity. If the Spurs trade Wembanyama, they are not only moving a player, They are admitting that the next great era ended before it truly began. That would wound the fan base in a way no draft pick package could immediately heal. And that is why this decision is so brutal. The Spurs may have control on paper, but once a superstar's heart becomes uncertain, control starts feeling much weaker than it looks. The trade package nobody wants to pay. If the Lakers really tried to trade for Victor Wembanyama, the price would be almost impossible to define. How do you value a player who has no real comparison? He is too young to be treated like a veteran star, too dominant to be priced like a prospect, too marketable to be measured only by stats, too rare for any normal trade formula. That is the problem. San Antonio would not start the conversation with one young player and a couple of picks. They would start with everything, every available first-round pick, every swap, every promising young piece, every salary tool needed to make the deal work, and even then, the Spurs could say no, because some players are worth more than packages. For the Lakers, that creates a brutal choice. If they gut the roster to get Wembanyama, they may end up with two superstars and not enough depth. If they protect too many pieces, San Antonio may refuse to take them seriously. If they wait, another team could enter the conversation with a better offer, and that is where the rest of the league becomes dangerous. Oklahoma City has assets. Houston has young talent. Orlando has size and defense. New York has ambition. Miami always believes it can land stars. Teams that may not be Wembanyama's preferred destination could still force the price higher just by entering the room. That is the nightmare for Los Angeles. The Lakers may have the glamour. They may have Luka. They may have the destination advantage. But they do not automatically have the best trade package, and San Antonio knows it. If the Spurs ever decide to listen, they will not be doing the Lakers a favor. They will be creating an auction. They will make every serious team show its hand. They will use the Lakers' public connection as leverage and ask everyone else, can you beat this? That is how a rumor becomes a war. And in that war, the Lakers would have to decide how much of their future they are willing to sacrifice for the chance to own the NBA's present. The league reacts. Around the NBA, the reaction would not be calm. Players would understand the pull of Los Angeles. They know what that stage means. They know the business side, the brand side, the championship side. But they would also understand how shocking it is for a young franchise player to be linked to a move this early. Veterans would call it player empowerment. Critics would call it impatience. Fans would call it betrayal or destiny, depending on the jersey they wear. That is what makes this story so perfect for the modern NBA. Everyone can see it from a different angle and still feel like they are right. Spurs fans would say Wembanyama owes San Antonio patience. The organization drafted him, developed him, protected him, and built around him. To them, leaving would feel like walking away from a family before the house was finished. Lakers fans would say stars belong on the biggest stage. They would argue that if Wembanyama wants greatness, Los Angeles gives him the platform to chase it immediately. Why wait years when you can join Luka and become the most dangerous team in basketball? Other Western Conference teams would be the quietest, but maybe the most worried. Because if Wembanyama stays in San Antonio, the West already has a giant problem. If he goes to the Lakers, the problem becomes something else entirely. It becomes a super team built around two players who could dominate two completely different parts of the game. Executives would be furious privately. Some would complain that stars have too much power. Others would secretly call San Antonio to see if there is even a chance. That is the NBA reality. Teams criticize the system until the system gives them a shot at the superstar. And the media would feed the fire every out. Every quote would be analyzed. Every social media post would become evidence. Every Lakers silence would feel strategic. Every Spurs statement would be judged for hidden meaning. That is how the rumor grows bigger than the fact. By the time everyone is finished reacting, the question is no longer whether Wembanyama actually asked out. The question becomes whether the league can ever look at his Spurs future the same way again. If Wembanyama becomes a Laker, if Victor Wembanyama ever puts on a Lakers jersey, the NBA changes overnight. Not slowly, not gradually, instantly. The Lakers would become the most watched team in basketball, the most debated team in sports media, and the most feared matchup in the Western Conference. Every road game would feel like an event. Every national TV schedule would shift. Every contender would recheck its roster and ask one question: how do we stop that? Because Luka and Wembanyama together would create problems no defense is built to solve. Luka would control the ball. Wembanyama would control the vertical space. Luka would punish double teams. Wembanyama would punish switches. Luka would slow the game down until defenders made mistakes. Wembanyama would erase mistakes on the other end before they became points. That pairing would not just score, it would suffocate teams mentally. Imagine a close playoff game. Luka walking the ball up, Wembanyama setting the screen. A guard switches onto Wemby, and suddenly the Lakers have a mismatch near the rim. The defense sends help, and Luka finds the open shooter. They stay home, and Wembanyama catches the lob. They blitz Luka, and he splits the pressure. They drop back, and he walks into a jumper. There is no comfortable answer. Defensively, it becomes just as scary. The Lakers could gamble more on the perimeter because Wembanyama is behind them. They could play bigger. They could play smaller. They could force opponents into shots they do not want and trust him to clean up the rest. But the pressure would be enormous. A team like that would not be allowed to develop quietly. Every loss would become a crisis. Every missed shot would become a debate. Every playoff series would be championship or failure. Wembanyama would not be escaping pressure by going to Los Angeles. He would be choosing the loudest version of it. And maybe that is exactly the point. Some players do not run from pressure, but gores for the biggest pressure available because they believe that is where legacy is made. If San Antonio refuses, but what if the Spurs simply say no? What if they refuse every call, reject every package, and tell the league that Victor Wembanyama is not available under any circumstance? That may be the strongest move. It may also be the most dangerous. On the surface, San Antonio has every reason to hold firm. They have the player, they have the contract control, they have the culture, they have the fan base, they have the basketball logic. No team should rush to trade a generational talent because of noise, pressure, or a rumor that may never become reality. But the real challenge begins after the denial. How do you rebuild trust? Because even if Wembanyama stays, the story does not disappear. Reporters will ask about it at media day, fans will watch his body language, teammates will wonder what he really wants, every losing streak will reopen the conversation, every Lakers win will make people bring it back. That is the cost of uncertainty. The Spurs would have to do more than keep him. They would have to convince him. They would need to show a serious plan, not just promises. They would need roster upgrades, clear communication, and a championship-level timeline that feels real to a player who knows his own value. And Wembanyama would have a responsibility too. If he stays, he cannot half-stay. He cannot let the locker room wonder whether his mind is in San Antonio or Los Angeles. He would need to lead fully, speak clearly, and give the organization a chance to prove itself. That is easier said than done, because once a player imagines another future, it can be hard to return completely to the old one. Still, there is a powerful ending available here. Wembanyama could stay, win, and turn this entire rumor into motivation. He could become the legend Spurs fans dream of. He could prove that patience still matters in a league addicted to movement. But if that is going to happen, San Antonio cannot simply say, "Trust us." They have to earn that trust again. The decision that defines an era. In the end, this story is bigger than one rumor, one franchise, or one possible trade. It is about where the NBA is going and what kind of league it wants to become when the next generation of superstars realizes just how much power it truly has. Victor Wembanyama represents the future of basketball. The Spurs represent one of the league's greatest traditions. The Lakers represent the sport's brightest spotlight. And somewhere between those three forces is a decision that could shape the next decade. If Wembanyama stays in San Antonio, the Spurs must prove they can still build a championship culture strong enough to keep a generational star. They must show patience without being slow, loyalty without being passive, and ambition without losing the identity that made them special. History alone will not be enough. The banners and the rafters matter, but they cannot defend a pick and roll. The memories of Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and David Robinson are powerful, but they cannot convince a modern superstar unless the present looks just as serious as the past. That is the hard lesson for San Antonio. Drafting Wembanyama was only the beginning. Keeping him requires proof every single season. Proof in roster moves, proof in communication, proof in urgency. Proof that his best years will not be spent waiting for a plan that sounds good in press conferences but moves too slowly on the court. If he goes to Los Angeles, the Lakers would enter a new era of expectation. Luka and Wembanyama would not just be chasing wins, they would be chasing history. Anything less than championships would feel like failure, because when talent reaches that level, patience disappears. The world would not give them 3 years to figure it out. The world would demand dominance immediately. But the Lakers need to understand something too. Collecting stars is not the same as building a team. Headlines do not win playoff series. Jersey sales do not protect the rim. Dream pairings do not survive. Injuries, egos, chemistry issues, and the pressure of May and June unless the foundation is real. Luka and Wembanyama would be incredible, maybe even unstoppable on paper, but basketball is never played on paper. It is played through sacrifice, trust, spacing, defense, coaching, and the quiet willingness of role players to do the work nobody celebrates. And for Wembanyama himself, the lesson is even deeper. Greatness is not only about choosing the biggest stage, it is about choosing the right responsibility. Sometimes loyalty builds a legacy that no spotlight can replace. Sometimes movement creates opportunities that patience cannot guarantee. The hardest part is knowing which path is yours before the world decides it for you. That is why this situation matters. The modern NBA gives players more power than ever before, but power comes with consequences. Franchises must listen better. Players must communicate honestly. Fans must remember that these decisions involve people, pressure, careers, families, and dreams, not just jerseys and trade machines. The peaceful answer is not to attack Wembanyama, the Spurs, or the Lakers. The better answer is to watch carefully, think deeper, and understand that every great era begins with uncomfortable questions. Will Wembanyama become the next loyal Spurs legend? Will he chase a brighter stage in Los Angeles? Or will this entire storm become the pressure that forces San Antonio to build faster, smarter, and stronger? Nobody knows yet. But one thing is clear, the NBA will never ignore this possibility again. If you believe Wembanyama should stay with the Spurs and build his own dynasty, comment 1. If you want to see him join the Lakers and create a super team with Luka, comment 2. And if you love deep NBA stories like this, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video with another basketball fan who needs to hear what might be the biggest story of the year.